Major funding for these programs is provided by grants from HSH Nordbank and First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Perfect Building Maintenance, Allied Partners, SJP Properties, Murray Hill Properties, Bank of America, Greenberg Traurig LLP. Additional funding is provided by grants from Arbor Realty Trust, Antares Investment Partners, Athena Group, BRT Realty Trust, Burden LLP, City Habitats, City Investment Fund, Cushman & Wakefield, Eastern Consolidated, Essex Capital Partners, Herbert J. Sims & Company, Herrick Feinstein LLP, Helmsley Spear, Jackson Development Group, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Kilroy Metal Products, Massey Knackle Realty Services, M&T Bank, Meridian Capital Group, McSam Hotel Group, NEWMARK Knight Frank, Moinian Organization, Must Development, Palin Enterprises, Rosenthal & Rosenthal, Signature Bank, Sidney FETNER Associates, Sutphin Properties, Stonehenge Partners, Studley, Triangle Services, Witkoff Group, Extreme Contracting and Deconstruction.
Hello, my name is Michael Stoll, host of the Stoller Report, Real Estate Trends in the Tri-State Region. Flushing, the home of where my wife grew up, the New York Mets, the new stadium, and the largest Asian community, the Chinese community, larger than Chinatown. There's so much going on in Flushing. So today I've assembled 3 individuals who are really like the mega center of development of Flushing. You need, if you're in an area, you need somebody who's taking care of the healthcare. And in Flushing, there is only, in my opinion, one institution, and I'm fortunate to have Steve Mills, who is the president and CEO of New York Hospital Queens. Then going next to him, it's the largest owner of land and development in Flushing, Michael Meyer, president of TDC Development International. And last but not least, a returnee. Once we talk about Brooklyn, once we talk about Queens, my good friend Jason Muss, principal of Muss Development LLC, who is building one of the largest developments in Flushing. So, Steve, you've been in ways you've been in Flushing longer than anyone else here, because you went there 13 years ago, 14 years ago.
13, 14
so
years ago.
What's happened? What's resurrected Flushing over the last 13 years?
Well, I think the entrepreneurship of the larger Asian community had settled there has really been a major factor in the development of Flushing, the revitalization of Flushing. Going back, and I grew up on Long Island with some familiarity with Flushing, going back to its first settlers, essentially, not the Dutch, but in the 20th century, the Italian and Jewish community that really settled post-World War II. And you still see some of these people in the healthcare situation, both in the nursing home arena as well as the hospital, has been largely superseded by the Asian community of all nationalities in the Asian continent. But certainly the Chinese population and the Korean population and all the others, the Indian population as well, have really come into town and have sought development, have sought education for their children, and have really revitalized the commercial area downtown. It is literally like walking through a most vibrant Southeastern Asian city today. You would think you're in Shanghai, even Hong Kong in certain areas. It's phenomenal.
And you left Tishman and you went to Flushing. I mean, Michael Lee found you over there. I mean, on a deal. What's happening in Flushing? How many years have you been involved with Flushing, Michael?
Well, I met Michael Lee when I put an RFP in the Wall Street Journal for Queens County Savings Bank parking lot back in, I think, 95, 96. And Michael Lee and Joe Ficalori, your former guest, negotiated the deal. That is the site of our present Queens Crossing project, which is a mixed-use project. So I started back in 96, and as Steve is saying, it was very different back then. Now it's just bustling. Michael Lee is an example of what Steve is talking about, came from Taiwan about 22 years ago, started in the building trades, but really came to Flushing in the late 90s, assembled a lot of properties. He's a visionary. He recognized the great, what would be the great nexus in Flushing with the waterfront and the along Roosevelt Avenue and Main Street, and acquired properties very strategically. So we have a very good strategic land bank in Flushing.
Jason, besides the newest project, which we'll talk about in a second, Muss Development owns an office building in Flushing and also a residential apartment house. When did Muss come into Flushing originally?
Originally, we came into Flushing in 1983. Josh Muss, our CEO, president, acquired a property that Con Ed was utilizing as their central Queens facility. We built them another property up the road in College Point and took over this property. And not knowing what we'd do with it, it was not zoned residential. But anytime you can acquire 15 acres...
This was before you bar mitzvah even.
Somewhere around there, yeah. Anytime you could acquire 14 acres, 2 blocks from the nexus of a train station and Long Island Railroad stations and a major bus depot with the kind of population that we had there in between that and Shea Stadium and the tennis center, we thought it was a good opportunity.
But the office building that you built, what year was that built?
We actually didn't build it. We actually purchased it. It was built in the late 70s, and then we acquired it, I guess, in the late 80s. It was actually built as the Corvette, the old Corvette's department store, and we took the building over and turned it into an office facility. It's now currently the headquarters for Time Warner Cable. Not Time Warner as in the Time Warner Center, but the cable operation. They have a huge floor, and all the people who deal with customer service and technicians go through there. We also have many important tenants, such as one of our guests today, yes.
I have my landlord tenant over here?
Yes,
we do.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of high quality tenants. It's a first class building, and it's always 100% full. Very, very vibrant population of doctors, attorneys, professionals of all kinds are now filling that building.
You know, Michael, we were talking before the show about Queens Crossing and this ownership subject. And I always get to the story, and I remember many years ago, Richard Dreyfuss was in this movie called The Apprenticeship of Dudley Kravitz. And he was a Canadian Jew, and his grandfather said to him, Dudley, you have to own property. You have to buy property, and in New York City, a lot of the families are Jewish. So you were talking about that the Asian community is similar in this situation.
The Chinese community, Michael Lee, our chairman and founder, is very fond of talking about the affinity between the Chinese community and Jews. And I've working there in the last couple of years. It's fascinating, being Jewish myself. The focus, it's an ownership mentality and very entrepreneurial on the business side. And then culturally, there's a great emphasis on education. There's a great emphasis on food. There are very many.
The only thing is they don't gain weight. I mean, they basically our brothers over there, they keep thinner than the rest of us.
That's probably true.
But so talk to me about this, because we were talking prior to the show. New York City, Manhattan condominiums have not done well. Office condominiums have not done well. While in this development you have pre-sold the office condominiums.
We actually had a waiting list of over 200. We were sold out.
And this is 400,000 square feet of office space?
Well, not of office space. We have about gross about 100,000 square feet of retail and a podium. We have 12 floor stories. So I forget how many actual units in the subdivision, but it's predominantly being sold to doctors, medical, and professionals, as you said.
What about the lawyers and the accountants?
There are some as well, but it's predominantly medical. And as I said, the mentality is ownership rather than rental.
Right, and speaking on the healthcare, I mean, many people, they say, what is New York Hospital Queens? So, for my audience who don't realize, that's the old Booth Memorial, which many people had that, stigma or whatever you want to call it, the Booth Memorial. Now being part of the New York Presbyterian system, which is the finest healthcare system, don't worry, the other institutions will be screwed, but I do feel that way. I mean, How long is that affiliation? And let's talk about what you're doing now with this major expansion, because to service the people of Flushing.
Sure. As Mike pointed out, the Booth Memorial Medical Center was started by the Salvation Army in the late 50s to deal with the burgeoning population then of the post-World War II population. And I must say, the Salvation Army, which ran it for its first 35 years, did a spectacular job of creating a wonderful community hospital that had good reputation, brought a lot of physicians from major medical centers in New York, primarily NYU and Einstein trained, who settled in Queens in all of the various neighborhoods. And as we all know, Queens in general is a borough of neighborhoods. You can literally cross the street and be in a different country. And in the late 50s, early 60s, 70s, 80s, the Salvation Army shepherded, I think, what was a very fine community hospital. They decided as a strategic event to get out of the healthcare business nationwide. Their mission had changed. And they looked for a partner to essentially sponsor the institution post their leaving. All the major medical centers looked at Booth Memorial Medical Center as an ideal location to have an affiliation. And at that point, the then New York Hospital Cornell Medical Center was successful in acquiring Booth Memorial. I was actually the transitional CEO at the time. This was 1992, late 92, early 93. And I was fortunate enough to stay on as CEO, and I've been there since. What I've seen is the growth not only in the community and the change in the community to a thriving economic power, and I think it's just beginning in terms of what we're seeing in terms of the development that Jason and Mike have talked about, but also in terms of the needs, the healthcare needs of that population. We've seen a growth in the Asian physician population, all very well trained. Many of them born in this country, educated in this country as a first generation. Others, foreign medical graduates, received their postgraduate training in this country, are taking over office space built by these gentlemen and others and using our hospital for their patients. Very interestingly, we have grown over the last 15 years from, and you look at this in terms of activity. We started at, when I got there, at about 27,000 emergency room visits. We're doing 100,000 emergency room visits today, and that's growing. We've put up a building. We opened one in 2001, 100,000 square feet, an emergency department, which is now oversubscribed, obstetrics, nurseries, and we've done a lot of major renovations. We are now in the process of putting up a 200,000 square foot building that'll house 80 additional beds, two floors that will essentially, for the time being, be shelf floors, 10 operating rooms, suite, an interventional suite for all the catheter-based diagnosis and treatment of patients from cath labs to peripheral catheterization activities. So we're doing major tertiary work in the borough.
This is a $200 million project.
This is a $200 million project in the borough, and it includes a 375 car garage as well on Booth Memorial Avenue and Main Street.
And when completed with the extra 80 rooms, you'll have about 520 rooms?
520, right.
Now, in situation, the 520 rooms, is that the largest freestanding hospital in the borough of Queens?
Yes. It will be at that point the largest. Right.
Which will service yours. Now, let's talk about the project, the one that you acquired in
Skyview Park.
Skyview Park in 1983. Let's talk about that, because we've discussed it over a number of shows, but now it's really coming to fruition.
Yes. We are actually opening for sales the week after next. We have a 3,000-foot sales office directly across the street from our site, where we're planning in phase 1 alone 450 apartments and a 4-acre recreational deck, which will be open only to residents. And on this deck, we'll have an outdoor pool, 2 tennis courts, a basketball court, jogging track, 2 golf putting greens and driving nets.
Definitely golf.
Yeah, driving, which we think will be very popular.
No bocce
we have
courts, right?
two age-appropriate children's tot lots for ages 2 to 5 and 5 to 12. And we have a 6,000-foot indoor health club and spa with treatment rooms, jacuzzi, sauna. So we're really building a country club on a platform. Our platform is 75 feet in the air because we are over our 3 levels of retail. which is each level of retail is 20-something feet. So the first floor of our residential units will right away have incredible skyline and park views. So when you get up to the top floor of our apartments, we're about 225 feet in the air, and the views are just out of this world. You're staring at the skyline.
How much retail space do you have in this?
In total, we're going to have 1,100 condominiums on top of 800,000 feet of retail, which is a combination of big box destination retail and smaller shops, restaurants,
discount department stores, high-end electronic stores.
Right, soft goods, home goods.
I mean, I know in New York City, in Manhattan, and I'm not certain if it has. Do you see perhaps like a Whole Foods type of store gearing to the Asian community?
Yes, we have a large supermarket plan for the site. We haven't yet signed a lease for that yet, but the idea is that people can live in a completely integrated community where, as long as somebody from the outside is wiring them money, they don't have to leave. They could shop, they could do their grocery shopping, their electronics shopping, anything they need, apparel, could all be purchased right below their apartment. There's a special access point where the residents can get into the retail, but the people who are in the retail shops.
And what about parking?
Can't get in. We have a valet parking underneath the residential apartments.
So that's valet parking for the residential?
Yes, we have plenty of parking for both, but we keep the parking uses separate. So the retail parking is separated from the residential parking.
Will the retail parking is it free or is there a charge?
There'll probably be a small charge on the order of what Queens Center charges, because if you didn't have that, then people would park their car and walk to the subway for the day.
So for my audience, what would I know the property qualifies for the 421A tax benefits,
right,
which is very important because it's a 15-year phase year of taxes, so
right,
it'll be very reasonable. What do you project? I don't want to say with the sales office, how much would per square foot price of an apartment?
Well, the best way to understand it is probably just with price ranges. We're talking about one-bedroom apartments anywhere from 700 to 900 feet, somewhere between $450,000 and $600,000. Two-bedroom apartments anywhere from let's say 950 feet to 1,200 feet, in the range of $625,000 to $850,000, somewhere around there. Our three bedrooms are larger. Most of them are around 1,800 feet. We have some smaller ones as well, so our price range for those would be anywhere from $1 million to $1.3 million, and some penthouses up over $2 million. But so for the most part, our prices are in the $625 a foot range. But sometimes giving people ranges of the various sizes is easier for them to understand. But we have pretty much something for everybody in terms of price range.
Now, you have, how many developments? You're the largest owner of property in Flushing. How many new developments are planned or
we're the designated developer of Flushing Commons, which is on the Municipal Parking Lot 1, which is an EDC-sponsored RFP that we won with Rockefeller. That's going to be not as big as Jason's project, but close to 2 million square feet gross.
And what are your plans for that?
Mixed use, heavily residential, about 50% residential.
Rental? His is all condos.
No, ours will be entirely condo. It's spread out it's going to be over 1 acre of open
Didn't you already
park
said about
space.
the ownership mentality?
I heard that, but I'm going to get to my other question, which you know me too well, which I'll bring up earlier. It's wonderful building condominiums, and it's wonderful for the ownership mentality, but there are, fortunately, the population there likes ownership, and they can afford it, and now that mortgage rates are down, which are really going to help, because if somebody's going to go into Jason's and buy a $400,000 unit and put 20% down, they can get a 10%. 10%. They're going to be able to get a good mortgage. But what happens about the people for the affordable component?
Actually, on our side of the municipal lot, there's the AME Church, and the way the city divided up the site, they have a small development in the corner that will be affordable housing. So the AME Church will be proceeding and doing affordable housing right next to ours. But we'll have about 550 units or so, over 700,000 square feet of residential. We'll have approximately 250,000 square feet of retail. And given our earlier conversation about office condominium, given the success of Queens Crossing, which is right next door, we've added more programming for office condominium again to build up on
Right.
to build on what's going on. And there will be 1,600 parking spaces below grade.
That's great.
What about hotels? You know, Stephen was talking before the show with regard to how successful or how busy the Sheraton is in Flushing. And, you know, also, let's be realistic, Flushing, you know, LaGuardia Airport's right there. So, you know, if you really want to be in a community, you want to be in downtown Flushing. You don't want to be at the airport. I mean, you can have the benefits of being 5 minutes, 10 minutes from LaGuardia Airport, and also having a community, as Jason said, with the pigs, with the people carrying the pigs.
Absolutely. I mean, we're a big believer that Flushing is ready for the next stage. Our Queens Crossing project is really, I think, is the first really grade A Manhattan-style project and skyscraper to come to Flushing. And the retail, you'll see it when it opens. I invite everybody there, but you'll see a quality difference, and I think that will be carried through. I think Jason's project as well is going to bring a higher level of quality. And to your point about hotels, we're a big believer. We went through the competitive process. We were strong advocates of a hotel. We believe a hotel on the order of a Westin, or even maybe boutique hotel. We believe there's a strong appetite for hotel condominiums among foreign Asian buyers that want to be close to Flushing. Don't forget, about 60% of Flushing is foreign born. So there's a huge interest overseas for people that want to affiliate.
We also think that Flushing has the ability to transcend just that neighborhood. We have a wait list right now for our condominiums that we only started accumulating about 60 days ago. It's over 400 names, and we haven't done any advertising. And if the names that we get on, we actually require people to put their zip code into our website, the skyviewpark.com website, and they have to put their zip code in order to register. So we see where people are coming from. And actually, I would say that only 25% of our people are coming from Flushing proper. The rest are coming from neighborhoods surrounding Flushing. Whitestone, Malba, Bayside, Kew Gardens, Forest Hills, the Queens people, and there are people coming from Long Island, from Manhattan.
But couldn't you, in reality, you know, like in Manhattan, you know, the Irish have been major investors of apartments in the city. If you did a marketing program, you know, in Shanghai or something like that, you might be able to get that also.
Well, we actually, and
don't even worry about mortgages; they'll pay with cash.
In our experience, people who are buying condominiums in these very established neighborhoods outside of Manhattan are local people who need these places to live in as their primary residence. In our Brighton Beach project at Oceana, 865 apartments, at least 90% of the people who purchased are living there as their full-time, as their primary residence. So it's something that it is something that could happen, but we think that we're serving a real need for people to actually live there.
That's a very good point you make. We have an office in Shanghai, and Michael Lee is always eager to tap in the way you mentioned. There are foreign investment regulations, though, on the mainland. It's recently changed in Korea, and there's a large Korean population in Flushing, and that's led to a spate of investments of Korean nationals in U.S. real estate in L.A., and I think you'll see it here again in Flushing. So I think you're exactly right. Our project is interesting. I think is going to draw a little differently than the Musk project. Even though it's only a couple of blocks away, you're on College Point, easy access onto the highways with a lot of parking. We're right by the hub. We're the end of the number 7 line. All these huge amount of bus hubs around. So we're expecting, I think, to draw more heavily on the local community than I think Jason's project.
You're also next to where all the buses go to Atlantic City and
everywhere.
Foxwood.
So
I mean, I was down there for a closing at the New York City National Bank one day, and I'd never seen all. I thought the entourage of the buses to go to Atlantic City and to Foxwood was
and to Boston for
at
15 bucks.
Boston and Washington.
That's right.
The problem is that Queens, if you look at Queens compared to Brooklyn or Manhattan, the amount of condominium production is extremely low. So there's that need that I think Michael's project will serve, our project will serve, and I think, of course, we need the hospital to keep it healthy.
But relating to that, you know, you're going to have a lot of your doctors are in your Queens Crossing facility.
Yep.
Now, you have over here. Wouldn't it be? You know, I'm not trying to negotiate a deal for these guys over here, but in reality, I know you have some freestanding facilities in Flushing in the area. Wouldn't it possibly be worthwhile for you to evaluate having an ambulatory, you know, or facility?
Well, actually, 2 comments I was going to make. One was that we have we
always take brokers for
3,500 employees. That's 24/7, 7 days a week. They mostly, this is interesting, they mostly live in the Flushing or nearby zip codes to Flushing in Queens. Some live in Nassau County, but primarily right there. What's changed is I've seen and I've heard a lot of people selling their homes and moving to the condominiums that these gentlemen are building to be right downtown. Likewise, our physician population, now there's two types. One are those in practice independently, and those we bring on to the full-time salaried faculty, looking for housing, no longer look only to Manhattan and say, gee, it's not a bad commute, 25 minutes, but are looking in downtown Flushing because they're looking at what you guys are building. And they're saying, I've got it all here. I've got transportation, right. I've got ease to LaGuardia Airport, and all the things we talked about.
In essence, and before I let Michael ask, this is a little bit of what has happened in White Plains with Capelli's developments.
Right.
People who had these homes in Westchester, one of my friends, Ray Cohn, his mother is moving into the Ritz, and she had a house, and never thought that she would move in. But you have all of the opportunities. Like Jason says, you don't have to leave his place.
That's right.
You know, you can go into, when you finish that one, you don't
That
have
was
to
one
leave.
of our
That's
major
right.
comps when we first decided to go and build these condominiums. Was Westchester, Jersey City, downtown Brooklyn, areas that had very important urban cores with no housing, no new housing to speak of for people who are entrepreneurial. You have 180,000 people living in Flushing, 46 bank branches, hundreds and hundreds of businesses. These people can afford what we're building,
Right.
and they're going to be very happy to live there.
Now back to your question about, you know, we have now an expression right across the street from your development, a family health center, that we just leased that space, I think about 2 years ago, and opened it a few months ago. We're going to be, before you pull your business cards out, we are going to be looking for more. Now, not to compete with our own physicians, which is always an issue, but to bring the types of services like cardiac rehab and things that are not in the community. And interestingly, as we get into this, the health of the Chinese and Korean Americans today is taking on more of what we face with heart disease and some things.
Right,
that
and you, I noticed on your website you were just awarded an award for your cancer center.
Right.
I mean, and the idea is, you know, having Flushing is, you know, you have everything now. You have a great healthcare institution, teaching institution over there.
Right.
You have residential development, retail. There's no question. I mean, you have more retail development. The parking opportunities are great. The convenience is over there. My question, in a way, is like, can the number 7 support all of this? You know, this is.
Well, I serve as well with the MUS organization. Claire Shulman has started a development corporation where we're trying to advance some of these infrastructure projects, one of which is the improvement of the Long Island Railroad, which is shameful there. It's awful.
Yeah.
I mean,
The
which
stop.
is great.
And the number 7, that number 7, which is the terminus of the 7 line, is on Main Street. I'm told it's the busiest subway station outside of Manhattan.
It would take me 2 hours to discuss everything about Flushing, but I think my 3 guests have really provided my audience and myself great information. I'm really happy to have Steve Mills, Michael Meyer, and Jason Muss. Next week, we leave Flushing and we go to Stanford. See you next week.
Major funding for these programs is provided by grants from HSH Nordbank and First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Perfect Building Maintenance, Allied Partners, SJP Properties, Murray Hill Properties, Bank of America, Greenberg Traurig, LLP. Additional funding is provided by grants from Arbor Realty Trust, Antares Investment Partners, Athena Group, BRT Realty Trust, Burden LLP, City Habitats, City Investment Fund, Cushman & Wakefield, Eastern Consolidated, Essex Capital Partners, Herbert J. Sims & Company, Herrick Feinstein LLP, Helmsley Spear, Jackson Development Group, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Kilroy Metal Products, Massey Knackle Realty Services, M&T Bank, Meridian Capital Group, McSam Hotel Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Moinian Organization, Musk Development, Palin Enterprises, Rosenthal and Rosenthal, Signature Bank, SIDNEY FETNER Associates, Sutphin Properties, Stonehenge Partners, Studley, Triangle Services, Witkoff Group, Extreme Contracting and Deconstruction.